He is putting in some epic stuff for Illuvium. This is his 4th AMA today, so definitely give him a little bit of breathing room as well. he's hasn't had too much sleep just now, but he's raring to go. He's always hyping it up, always doing an amazing job. So it's very exciting to have him here. How are you going at the moment, man? How you doing?
I don't drink coffee, and I have 2 here, and I had doubles in both of these. So that's about where I'm at right now. But you know what? I'm running like it's people say, oh, I'm the hype man and all this shit, and maybe I do hype things up and whatever, but I can't get hyped unless the product is good, right? There's certain projects out there that I get hyped up about. Civitas, I've been really vocal about lately. It's because it's a good team. It's a good team. It's a good product, and they're actually going to be able to build things. I don't just pick and choose stuff. And I think that's why I'm figuring out that the internal team holds stuff back from me until it's there. Like you saw at the Gold Coast convention, I'm sitting there, I'm talking to you, and I see an alluvial on the screen, and I'm like, that's a PB2 alluvial. Like that, what you said it wasn't going to be there. And they're like, oh, if we don't, because they know if I knew that was happening, I would have gone ham and said PB2, it's going to be at the Gold Coast conference. So like, yes, I hype things up, but it's only when the product is good. When Illuvium Zero first launched, I was like, mother of God, this thing is dog's ass. Like what? So did Grant. It's so, I don't know. Maybe I'm the hype man, but it all comes from a real place.
Yeah. I've always felt that way. Is that passion trumps. In a lot of cases, passion for me even trumps qualification sometimes. If you're passionate about something, you can learn everything you need to learn on the job if you really, really want to, and you can push it forward. So there's nothing better for a team than a passionate team. And I truly believe that. So we'll start it off a bit slow, but just quickly for me, because I never ever get sick and tired of hearing it. Can you summarize your vision of Illuvium?
It's not really my vision, man. It's Aaron's vision. I guess that it's a combination from a studio perspective. It's a vision across all 3 co-founders. There's a game vision. There's I would say an IP vision that Grant has, which he talks about Netflix. He talks about movies. That's his passion, and that's why he's needed to create these alluvials that really, really just play on that nostalgic feel of like, I want to see them come to life. And then my business vision is to just dominate and become the biggest studio in the world. I am probably one of the most competitive people in the world. I'm not even joking. Like, I have a sickness. And the whole reason this started is because Kane was like, dude, Kane being our eldest brother was like, I mean, you can start a project, but like, dude, you're never going to catch me. I'm better than you. And I was like, I literally got out of that car and I was like, I will not sleep until I come up with something. And yes, it took longer than a night or whatever, but like trigger me and I'm competitive as fuck. And so, yeah, that's kind of our 3-part vision. I can go through the game vision that Aaron has is to build this interoperable world that has eventually over a 20-year span, 9 AAA games that are all seamlessly connected and utilizing all of the same assets that can only be caught out of the one overworld, which is not just small. It's again, like 7 different regions. It's absolutely huge. And tapping into ideally, and this is where I come in, where when we need to write IIPs to get things across the line, we want to build the games that we played when we were young, right? Like that really, really gave us that feeling of like, this is a good game and an addictive game and competitive. So almost all of the games will be super competitive, super immersive, and something that is going to really tap into your childhood if you're around that sort of 30 to 45 age bracket.
Yeah. I'm excited for that nostalgia trip because I've started to fall out of love with Pokemon a little bit because it hasn't really cared about the older audiences for a while, which is a shame. But I'm very excited to be on this Illuvium journey, and I can't wait until it is one of the biggest IPs in the world. Just returning back to Pokemon for a minute, I know you enjoy Pokemon, and this is a question I ask a lot of people that I play Pokemon with, is what is your favorite Pokemon type? And does that translate into Illuvium?
Electric.
Electric? Does it translate into Illuvium? Do you love Squiz?
Who do you think hyped Squiz up to the absolute max, right? Like my friend was the one who, like my in real life friend, I don't know. I mean, I've lost them all now because I'm constantly talking to you guys, but my in real life friend, I went to him and he was like, dude, I love what you're doing. I love games. And, would it be sweet if I designed a character? And I was like, yes, 100%, but please make it electric. They're my favorite. And so, yeah, Squiz is definitely my number one character.
Awesome. Yeah, I don't know. My favorite character could be maybe it's a snake alluvial in the game, I think. Right, so
that snake is sick. Like I love him too. He's probably in my top. I say he. They're not.
Yeah.
But it is an awesome weapon to use. Like there's something about having that character on the board. Like when survival mode pops up for the day and you get that character, Coriox, and you can just plomp him at the back and he's just laying down magma strikes just over and over again from range. It's pretty cool.
It's pretty monstrous. So we'll move on to Illuvium Arena now. So I've got quite a few topics I want to get through today. And if we have any time at the end, we can definitely ask the chat as well to put forward their questions. But let's get started. So you mentioned, I think it was in a tweet or on a Twitter space, I can't remember. You mentioned aiming for 8 to 10 weeks for PvP to come out, right? So where is it currently at in terms of development?
So it's been designed, which is I mean, I would love to say the hard part, but Aaron is a freak, and he's able to really dig in deep and design things pretty quickly. And so after he got over his sickness, he basically said, look, I've been working with the game team, the game design team, and I'm not 100% happy where it's at. So I'm just going to go in here and I'm going to come out the other end and I'll have PvP fully fleshed out, fully designed in a really competitive way. Once again, he hasn't given me all the details because then I'd probably sit on here and tell you exactly how it's going to work. But it's designed, which is quite a large part of the job. The development of it is starting. I think either it started on Monday or it's scheduled to start next Monday.
So that you're talking about like building the battle board and all that sort of stuff, or you talking about coding in the rules and everything into the game, or do you don't know?
No, coding in the rules. It's a different style of leaderboard. Like it's a different UI. There's a whole bunch of elements that need to be developed for that to work. And yeah, they're going to go pretty hard at it. And what Aaron basically said to me, he goes, I want it out before Christmas. If that's what he's gunning for. Again, don't hold me to that, but and it's definitely not a hard date. We don't have an internal date. If we did, the council would already know about it. As you know, like that's our new method and it's been working much better. But you can see now that we are not fucking around here, right? Like we are building AAA games very, very, very quickly. With this once we get PvP, I'm going to go absolutely ballistic at trying to convert Teamfight Tactics players, Dota Underlord players come across, because at that stage, yes, it won't be connected to the blockchain, but they don't give a shit about that, right? They just want to play a fun game. And to be honest, if you went up to a TFT player and said, "Hey, we're going to have 150 characters all in what you," it would blow their mind, right? You would have to at least try it.
Yeah, definitely. I think the free to play element's going to certainly be a big advantage in terms of that sort of thing. So let's say PvP did come out before Christmas. It's not super polished off or anything like that. It's playable. People have it in their hands. I'm assuming those that already have survival mode in their hands. What remains after that? I think Grant mentioned today that Abyssal, Crimson, and Brightland Steppes are actually coming pretty well with their polish and everything. What is left? What is there a flow that I'm missing that I can't think of in the design?
No, the idea is that Illuvium Zero Alpha and the Overworld beta will come out before that. That's the gen, like I was playing Overworld a month ago. Like, there's been a whole bunch of polish on that. Illuvium Alpha, Johnny has just gone in terms of, like, he literally just said, "You know what? Like, you guys will not see me for the next 2 months," and that was a month ago. So, I'm not promising any dates or anything like that, but he's starting to talk in like specifics when it comes to like, there's a few animations that we need to do. All of the new buildings and renders have been implemented.
Okay.
Here's a little leak for you. Starting to think about, as you guys know, we've intimated that we may do a capital raise, a small one, like not the $300 million one that I think we'll do at some stage, but a small little bridging round. And for us to not do that, we would have to implement some other little things. And Johnny is starting to think about ways that make sense for Illuvium Zero to generate a little bit of revenue. And I'm not going to leak what, because it's like he's literally written it on the back of a napkin and presented it like 3 hours ago. But I was sitting there and I was like, yeah, fuck yeah, like 100%, like, makes perfect sense. It's not sitting there like, let's go sell a whole bunch of buildings prior to Illuvium. Like, it's not that. It's like competitive play inside Illuvium Zero, and it will start generating some rev diz. Once I don't want to give any dates or anything, but we're starting to think, okay, how do we get some more revenue in the door outside of things like merch and stuff like that?
That's actually a perfect segue into my next question, because a long time ago, before PB1, soon after PB1 dropped, you mentioned that for PB2 you wanted there to be yield based on leaderboard and things like that. Kind of, has your stance changed on that, or have you had more thoughts, or is it just not the right timing?
No, so the only way that I wanted yield to be added was when we had the ability to run tournaments, and once PvP was taken out of PV2, that's when yield was no longer valid.
I didn't realize that PvP was initially in the scope for PB2. Okay, yeah, no, that makes
sense. They rugged me. They were like, that was a conversation that I have a weekly with our lead game designer, Ben, and he was like, now look. And I was like, dear God, here we go. I know you're going to tell me some bad news. He's like, we've got like all of these other things, like way more characters, augments, all this stuff. And I'm like, dude, I only cared about PvP. Like, if I can't compete against another human, there's no reason for me to be on this earth.
Yeah, that's fair enough. So I look forward to when that gets implemented, because I think yield, even if tiny, will certainly put a lot more eyes on Illuvium, and I definitely look forward to their reaction on the game as well, because I guess the true testament is, even if you can draw them in with yield, is the gameplay enough to hold them there?
With PvP, 100%. I don't make money going and playing TFT. You should have seen the match that we had last night? I don't even know. The days are blending together here, but we have our regular game of TFT where, you know, I talk about having this guild where I can just be my super nerd self and like just it's pretty crazy. There are some core contributors that don't play but just listen in, and there's others that just veto the whole game altogether because it gets crazy. And we're sitting there, and Ben is on like 90 HP. Sorry, Andre is on like 90 HP, and it probably goes Ben, Andre, then myself in terms of the rankings internally. And I got rocked, right? Like I just gotten off the plane, I just gotten back, and I came like 6th or 7th or whatever. And I was just like, just make sure you beat Ben, like Andre, you can do this. And he was on like 10 HP, which means one more death and it's game over. And we got to a stage where Ben had built, he's like, oh, I haven't really checked into the meta much. We're like, dude, you worked at Riot. Okay. So number one, you basically designed part of this game. So just shut the fuck up there. But two, you study it. We know you do. So just like accept the win. And he gets him, it's like 88, 70, 55, 30. And we're all sitting there. We're like, this cannot be happening. He's going to win again. He's going to actually win again. And the last round, so he was 15-10. Ben's on fire. He's won 10 games in a row. And the last game, I go, Andre, just go random. Just put him anywhere because nothing's making sense. And the RNG, it came off and Andre won and Ben was mortified. Like, that's gaming. Now, I do put up ILV, so I do make it a little bit more interesting for it. Technically, there is yield in that. But at the same time, these guys play it every single week without me sometimes, and there's no yield there. And if it's fun, people will play. So do I think that's the time where people are going to actually come in and start, like, do I think thousands and thousands of people are going to come into this and play? Yes, even without yield.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more on that. The competitive nature of it is just so addictive to say the least. So we'll move on to Illuvium Zero now. I don't have too many questions here, but the game is very close. We're going to leave it at soon for this one, I think. But do you have any thoughts on how blueprints might be treated when it comes to land rental? Even in a personal opinion capacity?
Not really. We're going to be utilizing an external platform for most, like for all of our rentals. It's not something that we really want to do. We obviously need to have some sort of an integration with them, but we're just our dev team is working pretty closely with them. But we've got bigger fish to fry for now.
Yeah, definitely, and that would be Polemos, wouldn't it?
Maybe.
Interesting. So if you were speaking to someone, and maybe many of these people in this audience right now don't own land, what sort of utility or future utility would you tell them not to underestimate, even as speculation?
If they didn't have land?
If they didn't have land, what sort of utility would you say could come out in the future that you might want to look at land in a different way?
So here's the deal with land, right? You've got, if we achieve what I think we're going to achieve, and you know, originally I was talking 100 million players, but in 20 years, with the amount of, you know, the amount of games that we're talking about building, all AAA, all interoperable, all in the same universe, using the same assets, which makes it so much more accessible. If you said to someone, you know, all the Mario games, I would love to play them all, but hey, do I have $2,000 to buy 20 different games? You know, games in Australia are $99. Some are $119, you know? So how many players are we going to bring in? I don't know. If we do a really, really good job, somewhere between 100 million and like 500 million over the course of a 20-year span. Obviously, they're not all going to be active at the same time, but that is a ridiculous amount of people. Now, when you can only get fuel from a single source, and that's 20,000 plots right now, and let's not forget, it's decided by the council when more plots get sold. So if there's an IIP to say, hey, we want land, and the community's all like, no, there's not enough players here or whatever, it could stay at 20,000, right? And then there's 20,000 plots forever. It might, maybe we do one more sale and there's 40,000, and then at that point it's snapped off. But at the very maximum, there's 100,000 people on Earth that will be able to be producing this resource that powers 8 other AAA games. So that's a finite resource that I'm not willing to gamble with personally. And that's why I went deep into it, because I was like, I see what's happening here, right? Like, then on top of that, you've got blueprints that can be created where you can have exclusive skins where you could be the only person in the world that has this skin or an emote. And what's that worth to someone? I genuinely think that there's going to be like skin factories that are created where these guys are like buying blueprints off people and saying like, we want to monopolize the skin game. And if you want to buy it off us, guess what? We're going to charge you ridiculous amounts of money. And then, I don't know, someone magically creates a blueprint. It might just be some little guy who's got, one single tier 1 plot of land. And then all of a sudden that company that is the mega skin factory goes, well, we hold, it's like someone finding a diamond deposit, and that those guys that literally hold back all of the diamonds to keep the price of diamonds up, if all of a sudden someone finds a deposit over there, they're like, get it out of their hands immediately. We will buy every single one of them, bring them to us, because they want to keep it. So then you've got a guy who gets an offer which is outrageous for a skin, because remember, those skins are supplying potentially 100 million plus players. So they're finite. It's very, very finite. And that's what we want out of Illuvium Zero. It's an investor's game. It's not, there's talk about it turning into like a Clash of Clans style, like more like really, really interactive. You've seen the graphics now. I always talk shit about Illuvium Zero and say like, I can't really be bothered playing that. It's not my style. But over time, it might turn into a game where you actually really are addicted to it, and it's super fun for even people like me, right? So finite resources, super amounts of fun. You take your pick if you want to play it or not.
Yeah, I think I've always had like a simple or a really brain dead mobile game in my life. I chop and change them every now and then, but I've always had something. Even if I can play TFT on the bus, sometimes I'll just go, I'll grab my clicker game, whatever it is. There's something about it that just feels enjoyable to play over a long period of time, I think. Like you're just progressing this thing over 2 or 3 years and building up, in this case, your city. And I'm very excited for that side of things. So the other thing, there are 2 more quick things that we'll knock off for Illuvium Zero, is that, do you think blueprints will be able to extend past skins, things like emotes, and maybe even really special Illuvatars or anything like that?
I'm not ruling it out, but there isn't any plans for that at the moment. But yeah, anything's possible with an IIP.
And the other thing that I'll touch on is elements. So elements, as many in the chat might know, are currently used to build up your city, but aren't really sold on the open market or anything like that, like fuel can be. Are there any plans for elements being used in other parts of Illuvium, or are they going to stay quite strict to Illuvium Zero, do you think?
I think, again, I don't want to, probably not, but there's always the possibility. But right now, they're just purely made for Illuvium Zero.
And what about proposal? Could an IIP in theory change elements to be sellable on the open market?
Dude, an IIP can make us do what Aaron always jokes about, and we have to create a dating simulator. Like an IIP is God in our, like, it's a decentralized protocol. We are powered by the community. It's just that we've come up with, ideas and a game design that the community agrees with. If they want to change that, you've seen multiple IIPs go through that have changed the course of Illuvium almost, completely, and anything's possible.
Yeah, definitely. So, yeah, that's something that a lot of people seem to forget as they ask questions like this, and they're like, "Well, you could put in whatever you want into the game. You just got to talk to people and make it happen." And it really is that simple. So, I
It's
do.
it's so frustrating. No one does it. I even say to them, I'm like, oh, if you're so upset, write an IIP, and they're like, oh, well, I don't want to do that. Like it's a very simple document. Just write it and, put it up to the council. No one's gonna hate you for it or whatever. Like there's been some very controversial IIPs that have come out in time. One that springs to mind is JOE, and he just did it. He just went, you know what? I'm doing it, and if this isn't well received, but that was one of the greatest things that ever happened in Illuvium's existence, was that change to the yield where the seed investors, and this is like almost a rug on the seed investors, but we're like, hey, you signed up to a decentralized protocol that is governed by the people. We core contributors, I wanted to stake, but I think about it now and I'm like, if I could have had my stack staking the entire time, it would have just been ridiculous. So anything is possible with an IIP.
Yeah, definitely. I do like getting the power back because for the past 5 or 6 years, just gaming companies in general. I mean, Battlefront 2 was ruined. That was probably the big nail in the coffin for me. I do like the ability to even just talk to people like yourself, whether it's on stream or in the Discord. It is a pretty amazing feeling, and I think it's going to carry Web3 through to the end for sure. So the next thing we'll go into is we'll jump into Illuvium Overworld. Okay, so firstly, for those that might be unaware, do you want to give us a really brief rundown of what the Illuvium bonding curve is?
Yeah, so it's essentially a system where each alluvial is tied, each unique, not unique as in each of the 150 alluvials is tied to its own bonding curve. Some are more steep than others. And it basically means every time one is caught, it gets harder to catch the next time, right? And that continues and continues. And it's gradual, right? So it doesn't get to the point where it's literally like, I mean, if we took a while to get to set 2, then it would get to a point where it's really, really, really difficult to encounter, say, a ram fire. But it's just another mechanism for us to ensure that as we go along, it's harder and harder to find the rarer alluvials. But they're all tied to one.
So, a question on that I've been wondering for quite some time is the T0 alluvials and how exactly they fit into this. Do they have a bonding curve even though they're free to play? And can they go extinct when the set ends like everything else?
No. So they're just free to play. They're always there. They
Okay.
don't get harder and harder. The idea is that's why we say theoretically you can start for free. You can level up I think you can't even get them past like level 20. So they're basically just there to, which means yes, you can capture one that has good stats and you can level it up to level 20 and maybe you get 5 of those and then you go onto the Illuvidex and there's someone like me who's like, wow, I just found this game. I can't be bothered going in and just starting and grinding that first 100 hours to build up those tier zeros. I'll pay $100 per tier 0. Then all of a sudden you've got $500 in your kitty. You can use that to buy some tier 1s, maybe a tier 2. I don't know what the pricing is going to be, but yeah. So, but they're not tied to a bonding curve. So the idea is that they, as beautiful as they look, they're just free to play characters, and they're designed to give people a really good idea of how to play the game, what it looks like, and how the abilities and synergy system works.
Yeah. So you mentioned leveling, and we haven't really discussed this much, or I haven't seen it been discussed very much at all in the Discord or anything like that. Can you give us more detail on how the leveling might work? Is it similar to Pokemon where everyone gets experience points and they level up? And do you need Illuvials to hit a certain level before you can fuse them together?
I don't think you need. Actually, wow. I do know this, but I don't want to get it wrong. I think you do need to get them to the highest level before you can fuse them. I'm fairly sure. This was a conversation that I had with Aaron like 18 months ago. So, and the game design team changed things all the time. So I think that's the case. And the reason is, if you have like I don't think they're going to average out the levels when you fuse, right? Like when you average out the percentage of hollows. You have 2 hollows and then you have 1 non-hollow, and you fuse them. You've got a 66% chance of getting a hollow. I don't think they're going to go, you've got a level 5, you've got a level 34 and a level 26. Let's average that out. And that's what I think that's too complex. So I'm fairly certain you've got to get it up to its highest level before you can fuse it.
So that does bring the question of, when you're talking about averaging, is the random stat distribution. So one Ramphie might have better attack than another Ramphie. When you fuse them together, do you know if that gets averaged at all?
Not sure. I would say there has to be some sort of system with that, because it's critical to, you're not going to want to fuse and have a chance that if your Ramphie loses a whole bunch of stats when it goes up to its stage 2. So I would say that there's a mechanism in place to ensure that you keep that level no matter what.
Yeah. I'm very excited for that side of things, because some people just forget sometimes that progression is really one of those key. You talk about gameplay loops a lot and how that's a really key part of gameplay. And I feel like gameplay loops and progression go hand in hand, where a gameplay loop needs to feed you progressing along in the game in some meaningful way that makes you want to keep progressing and getting to those later stages. And I like the idea of not only Illuvials leveling up, but then you evolving them and then leveling that up again, and so on and so forth. And just that entire loop in itself really, really excites me, and I can't wait. It also means that you can't complete your collection in one day, right?
Dude, the thing that rocks you is when you get into the overworld, and like, this is when the penny dropped for me. We've all been playing a game where you've got everything, right? You've got like cheat codes on, right? You have access to every augment, you have access to every single alluvial. That's not reality, right? Like, when you go into the overworld, it's tough to capture things. You've got to go, and then you think about it. Imagine if you go into one region, right? Very likely that you're only going to get water alluvials in there. Maybe there's a couple of sprinklings of nature and whatever that you can pick up, but you're probably going to have to go to another region and another region and another region. And so the whole game is designed for you to grind. And until you get, people are like, oh, is the overworld going to get a little bit boring? And I thought that myself. I was like, maybe it is. Right? Like there isn't alluvials literally walking around and stuff. I thought that would also be an issue. And I said to Aaron, when I saw that, I was like, dude, no, like, it's even cooler, because you transform yourself into a new genre to battle these things. It's like a mash of the genres, and that's where this whole like interoperable idea in his head has come together. So yeah, I don't even know where I was going with that to start off with, but yeah, that in terms of like how hard it's going to be to build up that team, every single person is underestimating it. Like genuinely, Aaron's a sicko too. Like he might look like he's all stable and he's like compared to Grant and I, he probably definitely looks stable, but he will make this very, very hard for you to get all. Like if you're a collector and you want to collect them all, have some fun and gear up because you're going to be there for not just days, potentially years.
I look forward to it. Years is what I'm after. I think I've completed the Pokedex in the past 4 or 5, I think, games. It gets easier over time as you can transfer them and stuff, but it's always fun doing it all over again. I'll tell you that much. So Greedy in the chat had actually a really good question. He asked, "How do Illuvials earn XP?" What I'm most interested in is earning experience points and things locked to Overworld.
I think it is. I haven't heard anything. Like I absolutely know that that's how you gain experience in the overworld. I don't think there's any plans for like ranked mode. It's yeah, no. It'll be locked to the overworld.
Yeah. That's what I figured as much, but always good to get confirmation, of course. So, the last thing we'll talk about with Illuvium Overworld is you're really hyped about the capture flow in Illuvium, and you just discussed it briefly then, so we won't go too deep in it. But how complete is it? Will it be available for the Overworld beta?
Dude, it's done. It's done. This is why people like
SFX and everything.
It's okay. So, all right, let me talk you through it. So. So you're running around, and I'm like, when it comes to like the locomotion and movement, my brothers have teased me all my life. I'm not that good with like first person shooters. I'm terrible at, right? And I think it's because of my eyes, and they're really really bad. I've been waiting for so long to be able to get laser on them, but like they keep on changing or whatever, and anyway, so you've got these mag boots, you've got this jetpack, and you're shooting around the overworld, and you just see this little speck, and you got to shoot it. And like I remember, even Andre, when he was taking me through it, he's like, "Dude, shoot it," and I'm like, "I'm trying to fucking shoot it, all right? Like I'm shooting, am I not?" And he's like, "Yeah, aim at it." I'm like, "And you can zoom as well," and I'm like, "Chew, chew." And I'm like trying to get in. Finally, I shoot it. And he's like, "Okay, you've shot it now. Run up to it. And you go into the encounter, right? Click a button, go into the encounter." That's when Battlefield opens up and you figure out what is in that encounter, right? It might be 3 alluvials, it might be 5 alluvials, it might be 1 alluvial. And you've got to put your team down and beat them first, right? Once you beat them, Mozart comes out and you've got your shards and all the different types of shards that you have. Hopefully, if you come up against a ramfire, you've been smart enough to get yourself a tier 5 shard, because the chances, if you use a tier 1 on a tier 5, super, super rare that you're going to be able to capture it. We had like, I was playing like a pre-alpha version or whatever, so we have unlimited shards in there, and we tried with like 3 or 4 shards, but you're watching the encounter, the instance start getting unstable because you're utilizing the power, let's just say, of the universe, and it gets unstable, right, in this encounter, and you're like freaking out because Mozart goes like, tries to capture it, and it's like failed. And there's like already, this is where I was like, what is going on? How have they done this? Then he's like, "Dude, I don't want you to get upset," like, or not upset, but like, don't be disappointed if you can't capture it, because the game design team haven't come in and the data guys haven't put in the percentages right. And then all of a sudden it was like, he goes, oh, well, oh, no. And he's got the funniest accent. It's hilarious. He's like, he's one of my favorite people in the DAO. And he's like, oh my God, he's going to get it. He's going to get it. And it's like, and it just sucks it into your Mozart, and then just fireworks come out, and it's like, capture successful. And I'm sitting there going, we've done it. Like, but then you go, but that's a single, and the encounter immediately collapsed, right? But we had 3 other alluvials on the board, and I'm like, no, like, oh my God, like, I don't even know. I think there was a TNT over there too. And he's like, it's too late. It's gone. Never coming back. Never coming back. So you've also got this situation where you got to choose which one you want to capture. So if you've got 2 level 5s, tier 5s on the board, it's like, which one do I go for here? Because it's going to be tough to capture them. Where you're gambling whether or not you're even going to be able to capture one of them but before the encounter collapses. Getting 2 of them, I don't know. Like, maybe you can do it, but like losing them and I didn't. It's like a friggin' pre-alpha, and I'm like, I don't even get the alluvials, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, this is bullshit. Get back into that encounter. And he's like, you can't. Like, it's gone. It's gone now, forever. Literally, forget about it. It's gone. And so it's like, you've played Pokemon all your life. I've played Pokemon all my life. The one thing that I just hate has been the battle system. When you chuck me into a TFT-like game after I've just been running around this beautiful overworld, which Grant has just gone so beyond over the top on, and now I'm playing a TFT style game, I don't even care that it's against NPCs, right? Like, because this is what's going to now compile my team so I can go in and start wrecking people. Like, it's such a streamable thing that when people, like, I joked at the start, I was like, people are going to be bashing keyboards if they lose a ram fire and that encounter fails. Like, it's real, man. Like, that is going to happen.
I also really like how difficulty scales really differently than other collecting games. I'll use Pokemon again as the example, but it's like, once you got like a Charizard, you go back into like those first areas to catch a few Pokemon, and they're all level 2, and your Charizard's level 105, or obviously it maxes out. But it's like, there's this really interesting scaling curve and things with Illuvium. I've seen that the instances have different sizes and stuff. I'm assuming some are more difficult than others and things like that as well. And it's really interesting. Just the overall gameplay flow, I think, is going to be pretty amazing. I'm excited to play through it myself, obviously, but I'm excited to see it. So the capturing flow always felt like one of the biggest pieces to the Illuvium puzzle for me. Is there any other elements of the overworld that aren't really completed yet? In terms of game design?
So let me just tell you what is completed, and you can tell me where is. I asked Ben this yesterday.
They're asking for a leaked capture video.
I can't. I would do it, but I don't have one. I can show. I've already shown it on a different stream, but I'm sure there's other people that haven't done it. But there's overworld runs. What else we got? Sorry. One sec. Okay, so Sanctum Mesa is done, Crimson Waste is done, all the alluvials in PB2, Auto Battler, all the movement mechanics that we just spoke about. So like jetpacks, the mag boots, there's leaderboards, there's mining, there's harvesting, there's capturing, there's crafting, there's storing. I don't know. Do you know of anything else in there? Like, I think they're just doing a little bit of final polish, and maybe it is actually going to be soon.
Yeah, that's wild. Yeah, no, I can't think of anything. But inventory management and everything we haven't seen heaps of either. I'm excited to mess around with that sort of stuff as well. But yes, it sounds like pretty much everything is in there. I'm excited.
There's fusing if you want to see that. I can show you a video of that.
Definitely. Is that the one already up?
Yeah, so yeah, pull it up.
So we've got this one, which is opening the Illuvitar's disc, I think.
Oh, sorry. Not fusing. You've already seen fusing. Yeah, this is the Illuvitar's disc. So I shared this on Vulcans, but obviously not everyone has seen that. This is probably, I should have asked Alex before going on, but there's probably a much more polished version. This is pre-render. So like if Grant saw me share this, he would kick me. Don't really like any sort of combat with that guy. He usually wins. So, but I'll share it anyway. So
yeah,
because it's pretty cool. Like, just look at the not obviously that our graphics are going to be crazy, but just look at the concept. Like, this is how deep they go into things like just even Illuvitars.
it is. It's really. I'm imagining the SFX and everything in my head. I know just how polished it's going to be. Actually, there was one question on that leak that came to me instantly when I saw it on Vulcan's video, right? And that is this. The Mozart in that leak. Now, this applies to every aspect of Illuvium I'm talking here. The Mozart in that leak. If you had a skin on your Mozart, whether it be the holographic skin or a pink one or whatever, will that skin appear when you're opening your Illuvitars or anything like that? Or has that not really been thought out yet?
I don't think that's been thought out, but that's a pretty cool idea. Having and it definitely probably. I mean that I'm just thinking through the complexities there, like the development of that. It would take a lot. They would need to do a pre-render of every single skin, and I would say no, right? Like I would say that would be a generic Mozart that comes out. Is it possible? Yes. Is it worth our time to go to that level? I mean, I hope Grant's not going to watch this or anyone's going to tell Grant. He does shit like that. Like he will literally be like, "Yep, we're doing it," and then it's like the art team's like, "God damn it! Like what?" I wish you hadn't brought that up, but yeah, maybe it's my fault for even showing that. But that's like 10 times better than that. But it's just the I'm trying to express the thought process that goes into this stuff. Like we could literally be like, "Here's your Illuvitar, there it is," but this is Illuvium, and we have literally crazy people working for us, and they just go in and they want to make every little experience amazing for the player.
I think this is true testament. The first thing I think of is this is true testament to Illuvium getting on par with Web 2 gaming, all right? It's things like this that cannot be ignored to get onto that because pretty much any single free-to-play battle pass whatever game you think of that has a loot box, its loot box opening animation or whatever you want to call it is typically very iconic to that game and that team and all the rest of it, and it's a very big part of that world, right? And I think making sure that we have our own and making sure we do it as good, if not way better than theirs, is going to mean that we attract the right sort of people, the people that want to play the game and make it as great as it can be. So yeah, no, I definitely think it looks amazing. I'm excited to see the final product. So you get the chance, throw it into Discord.
Yeah, I will. Well, I'll get the updated version. I guarantee you, there's like a version of that it's probably done now, which is, Alex is rolling in his grave right now. But yeah, I mean, even when you go into the overworld and you look at the harvesting animations, I don't know if you saw the tweet, but I was just on another live stream earlier today, and they asked me a question. They were like, "So what have some of your animators worked on?" And I thought it was pretty funny. Like I'm just going to stop screen sharing here just in case there's like 800 leaks on my other screen. But I was like, I don't know, like, so it's been so long since someone's questioned our team and like the level and whatever. And I was like, I don't know, like Star Wars, and maybe like a couple of other things, like a guild of something. I don't know. And
Yeah.
Alex messaged me. I didn't know he was watching, but Alex messaged me and he's like, dude, by the way, if you need to know, here are some of the movies I've worked on: Star Wars, Ready Player One, Godzilla, Avengers, Transformers, Guardians of the Galaxy, and Alien. And I was like, oh, that's it in your 15-year career? Just a couple of sprinkle of games there? They're the dudes who are making, like, he is the head of animation. That guy is the one who's in control of making sure that when you harvest something, it blows you away. When you craft a weapon, the animation, and then we've got the sound guy who's like best mates with him. He's French. They're all, I don't know, all the freaks are French. That's what I've found out. Like, it's insane. And he's sitting there and he's like, yeah, but wait until Nico gets a hold of it. And they've worked on movies all their lives doing like crazy sound effects. So you're going to get hit by like unbelievable sound effects, unbelievable animation, unbelievable modeling. And every little experience you have in Illuvium Overworld is designed to literally immerse you and just blow you away.
I think I still hear the Pokemon battle theme whenever anyone's trying to start a confrontation with me. It's one of those things that, especially growing up with certain sounds and things, it's one of those things you live with for a long time. I think the Star Wars theme is another iconic one, and I'll probably have all my ringtones are usually game themes and things like that. I'm definitely going to have a couple of Illuvium themes around my phone, keeping me awake and alert at all times. So the next thing we'll jump into is other products. Illuvium's future and things like that. We're running out of time, so I'll skip through this a bit quickly. What's your current plan for mobile?
We actually engaged a team about 2 months ago now, to a really good team, and we haven't. It's a test so far, so we've only given them 4 or 5 assets, but that's to port over Arena, and these guys again are not messing around. They've ported over some serious titles, and if all looks good, we'll get that process started in the next, we're already testing it. So the idea is to have it as soon as possible. We know how many players on mobile and TFT and Dota Underlord. So like it's something that we absolutely need to have. But yeah, it is going to take time. I have no idea the date. I mean, I would expect them to be able to do it within sort of like 9 to 12 months, but we still haven't chosen that team. We're still in the testing phase, but we are not forgetting about it. Do not worry about that.
Yeah. I think I never really thought I never really thought about a halfway point where the overworld is only PC or gets ported to mobile later on, but you can then play when you're on the bus or whatever, or you're waiting or something like that, or you're on your break at work or something. You can pull out your phone and play a ranked match or two with the Illuvials you caught the night before, and I think that is a perfect middle ground. I look forward to bringing in more players with that, essentially.
Yeah.
So the other thing I want to talk about just briefly is, how big do you think you need to grow the studio to build out these 9 AAA games over the next 20 years? Considering that even Cyberpunk can only produce one game every, the Cyberpunk studio, I don't know, it's not CD Projekt Red, maybe. No,
Yeah.
I think I've got lost in something. Is it CD Projekt Red?
Yeah.
I was confusing myself. Anyways, every 5 years or so, 5 or 6 years, with their studio of about 500 people, do you think you're going to grow out your studio to 500, 600, even 1,000 people? Or do you think you're more going to own a lot of studios, something like EA might do?
No, definitely not. We can't control the talent. The one thing that we've done that's so different to every other studio out there, and the reason I know this is not because I've sat there working in gaming studios for the last 20 years. It's utter bullshit. I haven't. This is the first studio that I've ever worked in. It's because our guys that we poached from all the AAA studios from around the world, they say, this is crazy. Like they're freaks of nature, and they're kind of like, oh my God, am I doing well enough here? Because everyone is an expert. So where we get to, I have a idea in my head. It's somewhere between 600 and 1,000 over the next 10 years. But how fast we get to that will be dependent on how much talent we can bring in. But we will not waver from our model of hiring experts in their field, because we know how much more effective it is. Like, we are working so much faster than other studios out there around the world. It's not even funny. And if we want to get this vision of 9 interoperable AAA games done in the next 20 years, cannot waver from that. It has to be all experts. God, I'm like losing my voice at this point.
That's right. That's right. There's one last big thing we have to touch on, and I really shouldn't have left it till last, but it's a big one for me that I'm really interested in. You have mentioned the team building a DeFi infrastructure into the Illuvidex or accompanying it or something like that can be used by others to help generate revenue for Illuvium. I'm imagining a staking thing. Do you want to tell me what that's all about?
Sure. So Pedro at the moment is in Australia, and he came to us about 3 weeks ago, and he said, look, we're getting to the stage where we've built out staking V2, we've built out governance. Like, yes, we can do governance V2, but we're probably going to be utilizing another protocol to integrate that. I don't think we're going to go to the stage of because it's not a revenue generation exercise. I don't think we would go to the lengths of literally building our own like snapshot. But the guy's hungry, right? He's a super young guy. He's smart as fuck, and he can build things ridiculously fast. Like, smart contracts just appear like a network in his head. Just like, he's working on this screen. We've got these screens in the office, which are literally like, Grant was like, I refuse to not have these giant screens in the office. And so he's working, like, you see his code base, and he's just pumping it out. Like, I was in the office from like, I don't know, 10 o'clock. And I think I left at like 5 or something, just because I had a 30-minute window to get home. And he's got his headphones on, and he's like, oh, are you leaving, Kieran? And I'm like, yes, I'm leaving. Like, also, you were here before me. Like, what time did you get here? Like, you haven't left your desk, dude. Like, did you eat lunch? And he's like, oh, I will eat when I leave. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, man. And he's like, well, I can't. I'm like, you can't stay here because you don't have keys, so you got to leave. But that's the type, like, seeing it in the flesh, I was like, these guys are psychos. Like, they're like us. Like, they love working, and he is hungry. And he's not just hungry for building nice and beautiful V3s and V4s and stuff like that. He wants to do things like, let's move staking to L2, right? So that's the thing that he's working on right now. So there's a leak for you. So when the bull market comes back, if you remember, there were stages where people were claiming their ILV distributions, or not distributions, their rewards, and it was costing like $200, $300. We don't want to be in that situation. So he wants to move staking to L2. That's the first thing. And then he dropped a little thing called IlluviSwap. And I'm not going to go into it, but that would also be on L2. And that would be a way for you to, I said I'm not going into, so I'm not going to go into it. I promised him I wouldn't go into it. But that's the type of stuff that he's thinking about. And he's solo building it, right? Like, he's literally, he's a gun. He's a freak of nature. And I mean, look, to be honest, that's a lot of that is I am really losing my voice here. A lot of it is like forked code and stuff like that. But then there's a lot that isn't, right? Like, you got to remember, he built the Forge app in like 3.5 weeks solo. So he's sitting there and he's like, if we're about to start raising capital in a bear market and stuff like that, like just let me at it, right? Like let me build this DeFi arm under the Illuvium umbrella. It all goes back to the ILV stakers as long as I'm not taking my resources from the game, which we've gotten to a stage where a lot of the back end integration with IMX isn't building smart contracts, right? It doesn't touch the blockchain guys and the solidity coders. God, I can hardly talk. It doesn't touch them. And so he's now looking at it like, just let me build shit that makes money. And I was kind of like, Danny and I were like, do we, like, why not? You know, like it's not taking away from anything, and we can add to revenue distributions, go right ahead. And just the next day, like, you think IlluviSwap was all that the guy has? Like, he's got a lot of shit going on in that head. Like, if I could extract that, you would put it in a museum. Seriously. He came up with like 12 different revenue generation DeFi applications that we can bolt on to Illuvium. Guess what? We're GameFi. It's not like we're going fully left field. It's literally inside of our dome, and it goes back to revenue distributions. So for me, I'm like, go nuts, bro. Go nuts.
And for the audience, expect 3 to 4 different speculation videos on IlluviSwap. Because I have plenty of ideas along those lines as well. Anyways, that is an awesome note to leave this on. So I'll let you go. I know your voice is dying a bit and you've got another panel later tonight. So I'll let you get back to it. Thank you so much for joining me today, Kieran. It's been a pleasure. All the alpha has been pretty incredible, and I've been watching all the AMAs. I missed the Artemis one somehow, so I'm going to go back and watch that straight after this. I've been watching them all. You've been doing an incredible job spreading the good word of Illuvium and just giving the community insight into the project and what's happening. And I think that's really underestimated in the world, not just gaming. In the world today, is just being able to talk to people honestly and earnestly, so that you can just have a better understanding of things and educate yourself as well. So I've learned a lot today. I hope you get some rest when you get the chance. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we head off?
No, man. About the honesty and the transparency is, you can't, like, this is why I say, look into your investments, do your research on your investments. I made a lot of money in a very, very short amount of time when I was investing by researching the team, right? Researching the product. How thought out is this? Is this a flash in the pan? And the reason why Grant, Aaron, myself, and we literally say to team members, go nuts, fuck it, get on an AMA. We don't give a shit, right? Like, as long as you can talk and you aren't gonna, freeze up, there's nothing that you can say unless you leak the law. Then you're in big strife. Like, that's a no-no. But there's nothing to hide, right? We said from day one that we would be open, transparent, and so what you see is what you get. And if you feel like you're watching a founder or whatever that you've invested in that's kind of like holding stuff back, just dig deeper. Like, why? Like, what is going on there? And yeah, so with Illuvium, you're always going to get that honesty. And yeah, really, I love coming on your show. Obviously, I know how much of a big supporter you are. Kind of wish you wouldn't do so many of your analysis TA tweets. Sometimes they hurt a little bit. But you know what? At the end of the day, it is what it is. We know what we're doing here. All we can control is building a fun, competitive game that brings in hundreds of millions of players, and that's what we're going to do.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for coming on, man. It's been awesome.